Ladies and gentlemen, boredom. That heavy silence when nothing moves. No applause, no excitement, no rush. Just you and the moment. Most people run from it as though it were a disease. But what if I told you this boredom you fear contains the very key to your liberation? You see, we have built a culture on escape. If it's not fast, loud, shiny, or new, we turn away. We swipe, we scroll, we seek anything to fill the gap because the modern mind has been trained like a lab rat, rewarded for stimulation, punished with stillness. But here's the catch. The person who cannot sit in silence cannot face themselves, and the person who cannot face themselves cannot know themselves. So we chase everything but truth. You're here, listening. Ask yourself, how do you respond when life slows down? When the music fades, the phone dies, the world quiets, who are you in that silence? Because that silence is not empty, it's full. Full of signals you've missed, full of emotions you've buried, full of possibilities you've ignored. To be bored is not to lack excitement, it's to lack connection. When you avoid boredom, you're not just escaping the moment, you're escaping yourself. And in doing so, you lose access to the present, where all transformation begins. The greatest breakthroughs don't come while you're running from one task to another. They come in the pauses, in the spaces, in the quiet agony of waiting, of doing nothing. Sit with boredom long enough, and you'll see. It begins to reshape you. Your mind, desperate for escape, starts to unravel its habits. It digs, it searches inward. And eventually, if you stay still, it finds something you've forgotten. Wonder. The childlike wonder that once let you see beauty in shadows and stories in clouds. That wonder is still there, but you buried it beneath a mountain of urgency. You think you need more. More success, more information, more content. But what you need is presence, and boredom is the gatekeeper. What if, instead of fleeing, you leaned in? What if you welcomed boredom as a teacher? It would show you your dependency, your impulses, your need for validation. It would strip away the masks you wear when you're busy. And when it's all gone, when there's nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to impress, what remains? That is who you are. The truth is, you will never master your life until you learn to master your boredom. Because the greatest battle is not with the outside world, it's with the mind that refuses to be still. Stillness is not the absence of movement, it's the presence of awareness. The person who can sit quietly with nothing but their thoughts and not be consumed by them, that person holds the real power. For they are not driven by craving, they are not controlled by stimulation. They are free. Next time boredom arises, don't run. Don't numb it. Don't scroll past it. Sit, watch, listen, breathe. Let it burn away your distractions. Let it teach you patience. Let it awaken the dormant soul within you. Because how you handle boredom determines everything. It's in those empty spaces that your life begins to fill with meaning. And until you learn to be at peace with nothing, you'll never fully receive anything. The question is not how to kill boredom. The question is, are you brave enough to let it teach you who you really are? Boredom is not a problem. It is a mirror. It is not the enemy we've been taught to avoid, but a silent teacher, one most people are too afraid to face. In the age of endless distractions, boredom is now treated like a flaw in the system, a glitch we must fix immediately with a tap, a scroll, a video, or a notification. But in reality, boredom is not a bug, it's a feature. And when it arises, it reflects exactly what's going on inside of us. Most people misunderstand boredom as the absence of external stimulation. But in truth, it is a profound signal, one that comes from within, not from the outside world. It shows you the state of your relationship with yourself. When you feel bored, what you're really experiencing is a moment in which all the noise has faded, and now you're left alone with your own mind. And that can be uncomfortable. Not because nothing is happening, but because you don't know how to be with yourself when nothing is happening. That discomfort, that itch to escape, that's the mirror showing you where your inner world lacks richness. The irony is that boredom isn't emptiness, it's clarity. It's what remains when the distractions fall away. It is the quiet after the applause, the silence after the excitement, the stillness after the chase. It's the pure, raw space of awareness where you are invited to confront yourself without the mask of productivity or entertainment. And this confrontation reveals so much. It shows you your dependence on activity, your craving for attention, your aversion to silence. It reveals the hollowness of your busyness. Because sometimes what we call a hectic life is nothing more than a cleverly disguised escape from boredom. But here's the truth most won't dare to face. Boredom doesn't mean life is lacking. It means your inner awareness has dulled. The mind, trained to expect continuous novelty, reacts to simplicity with agitation. But that agitation is not boredom itself. It's your resistance to stillness. That resistance is a message. It's telling you something inside you is underdeveloped, underexplored, or unresolved. It's pointing toward parts of yourself you've neglected. Because when the external world no longer entertains you, the internal world starts speaking. And most people are not ready for what it has to say. To see boredom as a mirror is to stop blaming your surroundings and start investigating your soul. It's to realize that the discomfort isn't coming from the room you're in or the lack of activity, but from the shallow relationship you have with the moment itself. That's why two people can be in the exact same situation, sitting in a quiet room, and one finds peace while the other feels tortured. It has nothing to do with the room and everything to do with how they relate to silence. One person has met themselves in the quiet, the other is still running. This is why boredom is such a powerful diagnostic tool. It reveals where your attention goes when it has no assigned task. It shows what you're addicted to. It exposes how rarely you're truly present. And most importantly, it shows you whether or not you've cultivated an inner world rich enough to hold your own attention. Because if you can't sit with yourself in silence, what makes you think you're ready for the weight of your dreams? If you're disturbed by doing nothing, you won't last long on the road to mastery, which is often filled with repetition, silence, and discipline. Great thinkers, artists, and leaders throughout time have all had one thing in common: the ability to be alone with their thoughts without needing to escape. They've turned boredom into meditation, silence into inspiration, stillness into action. What others avoided, they embraced. And in doing so, they discovered that boredom wasn't a block to creativity. It was the birthplace of it. In those moments where most people fidget, scroll, or quit, they listened, and what they heard became music, philosophy, invention, and insight. The next time you feel bored, don't panic. Don't immediately reach for your phone or find a way to kill time. Instead, observe. Ask, why am I uncomfortable right now? What is this silence showing me about myself? What part of me have I ignored so long that now, in this moment, it begs to be seen? Let boredom be your mirror. Let it reflect your restlessness. Let it show you how desperate you've become for noise. And when you see it clearly, you'll no longer fear it. You'll learn to sit with it. You'll learn to breathe into it. You'll begin to watch your thoughts like clouds passing in the sky, and slowly something will shift. The discomfort will transform into clarity. The silence will become beautiful. And your mind, once scattered across countless distractions, will begin to center. Boredom is the gateway to self-knowledge. It doesn't mean the world has nothing to offer. It means your inner world is ready to expand. So don't run from it. Watch it. Learn from it. It's not the absence of life. It's the beginning of awareness. And the way you handle it will shape everything that comes next. Modern minds have been conditioned to avoid stillness. From the moment we wake up, we're pulled into a whirlwind of noise, movement, and endless notifications. We're trained, almost like machines, to chase the next thing, the next message, the next update, the next burst of stimulation. Somewhere along the way, we've come to believe that silence is unproductive, that slowness is laziness, and that stillness is a kind of death. But in truth, it is in stillness where we find life as it really is. And yet, it terrifies us. The world we've built rewards distraction. We are constantly told to stay busy. Productivity has become the measure of worth, and rest is seen as indulgence. You must always be doing something, achieving something, moving toward something. If you pause, if you stop even for a moment, you feel behind. You feel irrelevant. You feel bored. But what is boredom really, if not the byproduct of being unable to be with ourselves without entertainment? This is the deep sickness of modern living. We are afraid of being still, not because stillness is dangerous, but because it reveals too much. Stillness strips away the armor. It removes the masks. When everything is quiet, your mind can no longer hide behind tasks or distractions. You begin to see your thoughts, your fears, your desires, and all the subtle movements of your being with terrifying clarity. Most people don't want that. They would rather run from themselves than sit with the discomfort of seeing themselves clearly. The result? A life lived in a constant state of escape. We escape into social media, binge watching, food, noise, mindless scrolling, all of it cleverly disguised as relaxation. But it's not relaxation. It's avoidance. It's the mind desperately trying to avoid confrontation with its own emptiness. Stillness becomes unbearable, not because it is painful, but because it demands presence. And presence requires us to stop pretending. Every time we pick up our phones without reason, check our inbox for the 10th time in an hour, or jump from one app to the next, we are reaffirming a habit, the habit of running from stillness. And these habits become patterns. Patterns become personality. Personality becomes destiny. What we do daily is what we become. So when we live in a constant loop of distraction, we become fragmented, scattered, lost. It is stillness that holds the very medicine we need. In stillness, we process, we heal, we digest the experiences of our lives. Without it, we are like people constantly eating, but never pausing to chew or absorb. We consume information, media, conversations, but none of it nourishes us because we never slow down long enough to let it sink in. And then we wonder why we feel empty. The conditioning runs deep. Think about how often silence makes people uncomfortable. In conversation, if there is a pause, someone rushes to fill it. In a room, if nothing is playing in the background, we turn on music or television just to break the quiet. We're not used to being with ourselves in peace. We don't trust the moment unless it's filled with stimulation. But what if that stimulation is the very thing keeping us from meaning? The modern mind is overstimulated and under-reflective. It's filled with noise, but lacks wisdom. It knows how to react, but not how to rest. It knows how to consume, but not how to create. Creativity, after all, is not born from noise. It is born in the quiet spaces, the still moments where the mind stops chasing and starts listening. But if we've been trained to avoid stillness, how can we expect to hear the deeper call of life? We have to begin unlearning this fear. We have to teach ourselves to welcome silence, to befriend boredom, and to treat stillness not as an enemy, but as a sacred ground. Because it is only in stillness that we can remember who we are beyond the noise. It is in those quiet moments that we reconnect with what is real, our breath, our body, the sensations of the present moment. And in doing so, we reclaim something essential, our ability to be. The ability to be, not to do, achieve, consume, or produce, but simply to be, is the most radical act in a world that profits from your distraction. To be still is to rebel against the conditioning that tells you your value lies in your usefulness. To be still is to discover that your worth is not in your productivity, but in your presence. The next time you feel the urge to fill the silence, to reach for your phone, to escape the moment, pause. Ask yourself, what am I running from? What feeling am I avoiding? What truth might arise if I simply stayed still? You may be surprised. In that stillness, you might meet a part of yourself you haven't seen in years, a part that remembers how to wonder, how to listen, how to breathe, a part that doesn't need constant stimulation to feel alive. That part has always been there, waiting for you beneath the layers of noise. Modern conditioning may have taught you to fear stillness, but you can choose differently. You can reclaim your mind from the whirlwind. You can sit quietly and find that the silence, far from being empty, is full of wisdom, healing, and depth. Stillness is not a void. It is the space where life begins to speak again. The ability to sit with boredom is the root of creativity, discipline, and spiritual clarity. Not because boredom itself is magical, but because of what it uncovers when you allow it to unfold without resistance. Most people, when faced with boredom, immediately look for an escape route, a screen, a distraction, a task, anything to break the stillness. But those who dare to stay, who don't flinch in the face of nothingness, who allow boredom to stretch and expand, begin to discover something hidden beneath the surface of discomfort, a doorway to something deeper. Creativity does not bloom in chaos. It requires space. And boredom, when embraced, creates that space. It is the fertile soil where thoughts are no longer crowded, where the mind has the silence necessary to wander freely, to connect dots that never seemed connected before. When the external world no longer demands your attention, your inner world begins to speak. And if you listen, you'll find ideas, visions, and insights quietly waiting to emerge. Think of a child lying on the grass with nothing to do. They stare at the sky. They start to imagine shapes in clouds, stories in the air, games out of twigs and stones. That's not just play. That's the mind remembering how to create. As adults, we lose that ability, not because we're incapable, but because we don't give boredom the chance to breathe. We crowd it out with structure, schedules, and endless busyness. We kill it before it has time to whisper inspiration into our minds. Boredom, in its purest form, is not a lack of activity. It's an opportunity for reflection. It slows us down enough to hear the quiet thoughts we usually suppress. It creates the distance we need to look at our lives from a wider angle. And from that angle, we begin to see what truly matters. We begin to remember what we've forgotten. That's why spiritual clarity often begins in silence, in solitude, in stillness. When the noise fades, truth rises. But embracing boredom isn't easy. It requires discipline. And this is where the deeper value begins to unfold. Sitting with boredom is a training ground for the mind. It teaches patience, restraint, and self-awareness. It is not exciting work. It is not glamorous. But it is essential. Because the mind that constantly seeks stimulation is a mind that is enslaved. And discipline is the process of breaking that slavery. When you sit with boredom, you're telling your mind, I am not your servant. I don't need to chase every urge, every impulse, every fleeting craving for excitement. You are building the strength to stay present, even when nothing is happening. And that strength, this ability to stay still when the world tempts you to move, is the foundation of every meaningful pursuit. Whether you are building a business, writing a novel, practicing meditation, or learning a skill, it all demands that you face moments where nothing is happening, where it feels like progress has paused. Those who can endure such moments without giving in to distraction are the ones who continue on. The rest give up. They confuse stillness with stagnation. What we call discipline is, in part, the ability to remain committed when the process becomes dull. And dullness is just another face of boredom. To master your path, you must learn to walk even when the scenery fades. You must learn to keep showing up, even when your mind begs for something easier. This kind of discipline cannot be taught in books. It is forged in your daily relationship with boredom. Spiritual clarity also arises in the same space. All the great sages and mystics of the past withdrew from noise, not because they hated life, but because they knew that in silence, life could finally speak clearly. Boredom is what people call the first stage of silence. It is the threshold. Most people turn back at that threshold. They never stay long enough to discover what lies beyond. But those who stay, those who accept the discomfort, who lean into the emptiness, are the ones who pass through to deeper awareness. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts, not your distractions, not your need to be entertained. You begin to witness yourself, to separate the eternal observer from the temporary experiences. In that gap, clarity arises, not in lightning bolts of excitement, but in gentle waves of knowing. The kind of knowing that doesn't need proof or approval, just presence. If you wish to become more creative, train your attention to sit quietly with nothing. If you wish to become more disciplined, stop running from the dull moments. If you wish to become more disciplined, stop running from the dull moments. If you wish to gain spiritual clarity, welcome the silence you once avoided. The world will try to convince you that boredom is a waste of time. But boredom, when faced without fear, becomes the most powerful classroom. It teaches you to find value in stillness, to discover the richness of what already is, to break free from the addiction to more. It's not what you do when life is exciting that defines you. It's what you do when it's not, when it's quiet, when it's slow, when it's just you and the empty space. The ability to stay present there, fully awake, fully aware, fully alive, that is where everything truly begins. Boredom is the invitation to rediscover the richness of the present moment. It is not a void to be filled, but a door to be opened. Most people never open that door. The moment boredom arises, they label it as something negative, something to get rid of, something that signals a problem. But that feeling of nothing happening, of time moving slowly, of your mind grasping for stimulation, isn't a problem. It's a message, a subtle and profound message that says, You've forgotten how to be here, so we often assume that richness only comes from excitement, novelty, or achievement. We look for meaning in events, in accomplishments, in goals we chase far into the future. But the richness of life isn't waiting on the other side of your next success. It's already here, hidden in plain sight, buried beneath your assumptions, and overlooked by your distracted mind. Boredom is what arises when your mind becomes too restless to notice the extraordinary depth of the ordinary. Look around you right now. Notice the details, the way the light falls on the wall, the way your breath rises and falls in your body, the faint sound in the background you usually ignore. These are the threads of the present moment, and each one carries a weight, a presence, a subtle beauty. But when you are caught in the need to be constantly entertained, you miss it. Your attention skips over the miracle of now, chasing something louder, something faster. Boredom is the friction between your craving for stimulation and the simplicity of the present. It is not the fault of the moment, it is the mind's refusal to settle into it. That refusal is the real cause of suffering, not the stillness, not the silence, 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 not the silence. You think something is missing, when in truth, the only thing missing is your full attention. Children, before they are conditioned by our overstimulated world, often find joy in the smallest things, a shadow on the floor, a flicker of dust in the sunlight, the shape of a stone. Why? Because they are present, because their minds are not yet trained to need complexity. They are fully immersed in the now, and it is in that immersion that richness is found. As we grow older, we are taught to value speed, ambition, and productivity. We learn to treat the present moment as a stepping stone to the next thing, never as the destination itself. Boredom then becomes the enemy of our forward-driven mindset. But in truth, boredom is the call to return. It invites you to stop racing ahead and simply arrive right here, right now. If you accept that invitation, boredom transforms. It no longer feels like emptiness. It begins to feel like space, open, wide, and full of possibility. It's the space where awareness expands, where your senses wake up, where you begin to see that this moment, this breath, this quiet hour is not a waste, but a gift. But most people won't sit still long enough to see it. They break the silence before it breaks them open. They drown out boredom before it reveals what they've been ignoring. Because the truth is, being present is a kind of vulnerability. It means letting go of your mental noise, your stories about what should be happening, and facing what is. That takes courage. That takes humility. That takes trust. When you do it, you discover something profound. The present moment doesn't need to be exciting to be fulfilling. It just needs to be seen fully. Without judgment, without comparison, without expectation, when you drop into that level of awareness, the world becomes alive again. The colors seem richer, the sounds clearer. Your own thoughts feel quieter, more spacious. You begin to feel grounded, centered, not because something external changed, but because you changed your way of looking. This is why the richest experiences in life are often the simplest. Sitting by a fire, walking under the sky, listening to the rain. These are not thrilling events, but they are deeply nourishing if you are present for them. If you're not, they pass by unnoticed, and you go on feeling empty, chasing the next hit of stimulation that never truly satisfies. To rediscover the richness of the present moment, you must first be willing to feel bored. You must allow the restlessness to rise without reacting to it. Let it move through you. Let it speak. Because beneath it, there is peace. There is clarity. There is depth. The next time boredom arrives, don't fight it. Welcome it. Sit with it like an old friend who has returned to remind you of something you've forgotten. Let it slow you down. Let it pull you inward. Let it open your eyes. Because when you stop needing life to constantly entertain you, you begin to see its true beauty. Not the kind of beauty that screams for attention, but the kind that whispers gently through every moment, waiting patiently to be noticed. The present is not lacking. It is overflowing. But you can only receive it if you're willing to stop, be still, and truly pay attention. Boredom is not your enemy. It's your teacher. And when you listen, it leads you back to the infinite richness that was always here, right in front of you. What you do when nothing is happening determines who you become when everything is. It's easy to appear strong, focused, and driven when life is full of motion, when there are goals to chase, people to impress, challenges to overcome. But in those quiet moments, the in-between spaces where life slows down and no external force is pushing you forward, that's where your true self is revealed. The way you behave in those spaces, when nobody is watching, when there is no immediate reward, when the applause has faded, shapes your character in ways you can't always see. Modern life conditions us to stay busy, to move from one thing to the next without pause. We're praised for productivity, for hustle, for results. And so, naturally, we begin to believe that our value lies in constant doing. But here's the truth. It's not what you do when you're seen that defines you. It's how you carry yourself in solitude, in silence. In times when nothing seems to be progressing, think about the moments when everything slows down. You're between projects, between milestones, between relationships. Those are the moments most people dread. They feel lost, uncertain, and bored. There's no immediate purpose, and so they feel empty. They reach for distractions. They try to skip ahead. But what they fail to understand is that these seemingly uneventful spaces are not a pause in your life. They are the foundation of it. You are always becoming, even when you think nothing is happening. Especially then. In the moments of stillness, your habits are either growing sharper or duller. Your thoughts are either deepening or dissolving into noise. Your awareness is either expanding or shrinking into unconscious patterns. It's never neutral. You are either reinforcing who you were or building who you will become. Discipline is born in these spaces. When there's no pressure, no praise, no competition. When it's just you and your choices. Do you train even when no one is watching? Do you read when there's no test? Do you sit in silence when your mind screams for distraction? These small, invisible decisions shape your future far more than the big, visible ones. The truth is, most of life is made up of these in-between moments. The big events, the milestones, the victories, they're rare. They're the highlights, not the story. The real story is what happens in the days no one talks about. The days where it's just you, your thoughts, and the path that lies ahead. What you choose to do in those moments will echo into everything that follows. If you fill those quiet spaces with avoidance, scrolling, procrastinating, numbing yourself, you train your mind to fear stillness. You teach yourself that meaning only comes from motion. But meaning doesn't come from motion. It comes from presence. And presence can only be cultivated in stillness. There is a reason why some people seem composed, clear, and strong, even in the face of chaos. It's because they trained when it was quiet. They didn't wait for crisis to build character. They built it when the world gave them no reason to. They showed up for themselves long before they had to show up for others. That is what makes the difference. The mind wants excitement, it wants stimulation, it wants the next thing, but the soul wants depth. It wants connection. It wants truth. And those things are only discovered in the moments when nothing external is pulling your attention. When you sit quietly with no agenda and ask, who am I when nothing is happening? That question is the gateway to authenticity because it strips away all the performance, all the pretending. There is no need to impress, no one to convince, just you, raw, unfiltered, integrity, patience, purpose. This is why boredom, stillness, and inaction are not enemies. They are invitations. They invite you to build the kind of foundation that can withstand storms. They give you the space to align with your values, to recenter your energy, to ground yourself in something deeper than outcomes. Because when everything is happening, when life gets loud, fast, and overwhelming, it will not be your talent or your excitement that sustains you. It will be the quiet strength you built when life was slow. It will be your ability to stay rooted when others are swept away. It will be the discipline you forged in silence, the clarity you found in boredom, the presence you cultivated in solitude. So don't underestimate those quiet hours. Don't wish them away. Don't label them as meaningless. What you do in them is building your identity, your direction, your destiny. Are you distracting yourself or developing yourself? Are you wasting the stillness or working within it? Because eventually things will start happening again. Life will move. Opportunities will arise. Challenges will come. And when they do, you won't have time to prepare. You will only have what you've already built. And what you've built will depend entirely on how you spent those moments when nothing seemed to matter. How you handle the emptiness between the noise defines everything that comes after. Use it wisely. Boredom is often misunderstood. People treat it as an obstacle, an enemy to be defeated, something to escape at all costs. But boredom is not the problem. It is the indicator. It is a mirror reflecting your current state of being. And how you react to that stillness reveals everything about the state of your mind. You see, boredom is not the absence of stimulation. It is the discomfort that arises when you're left alone with your own thoughts, when there's nothing external to distract you from the internal noise. It's the moment when your mind, conditioned for constant movement and novelty, begins to rebel against silence and stillness. But herein lies the opportunity. What if boredom is the gateway to your inner world? What if it's the doorway through which you walk to meet yourself? The tragedy is that most people will never open that door. They will scroll, consume, distract, and repeat the cycle endlessly, never realizing that the boredom they run from is the space where their true self is waiting. You begin to see the truth of this when you stop resisting the quiet. Sit with your boredom. Don't judge it. Don't try to manipulate it. Let it rise like smoke in a still room. What you will notice is that the boredom transforms. The mind, given stillness, begins to unfold new dimensions. Ideas appear, patterns surface, emotions once buried begin to speak. What once felt unbearable becomes peaceful. The agitation is replaced with insight. Why? Because boredom is the mind's resistance to presence. When you are fully present, right here, right now, you cannot be bored. The leaf falling from the tree, the breath entering your lungs, the sensation of sitting on the earth, all of it becomes rich and deep when you are present. But the mind that craves constant stimulation cannot appreciate simplicity. It becomes restless, fidgeting, seeking dopamine. That's what boredom is. A hunger for escape. And when you feed that hunger with mindless distractions, you teach your mind that presence is not enough. You weaken your capacity for stillness. All deep work, all meaningful creativity, all clarity of thought arises from stillness, from boredom. The greatest thinkers, mystics, inventors, and artists have all walked through boredom into brilliance because they understood what most people ignore, that you must go through the fire of silence to reach the gold within. You must endure the tension of not knowing what to do next, because it is in that space where something new is born. You may think you're bored because life is repetitive. But life is not repetitive. You are inattentive. The sunrise is never the same. The wind never blows in the exact same rhythm twice. Every conversation holds infinite variation. But if your awareness is dull, even the most miraculous moment becomes mundane. Boredom, therefore, is a call to sharpen your perception, not change your circumstance. The people who train themselves to sit with boredom without fleeing are the ones who master their inner world. They are the ones who develop the patience to build, the resilience to endure, and the creativity to create something from nothing. They become still enough to hear the whisper of intuition, the subtle call of the soul. And while the world chases excitement and pleasure, these people go deeper. They move slowly, deliberately, and when they act, it is not from restlessness, but from clarity. That is power. You see, if you are always running from boredom, you are never choosing your actions consciously. You are reacting, you are being pulled by unseen compulsions driven by fear of the void. And in this way, boredom becomes your master. But when you reverse this, when you sit with the stillness, let the boredom burn and choose not to run, you become free. You are no longer driven, you are directing. Every time you resist the urge to escape boredom, you take back your attention. You strengthen the muscle of presence. You teach your mind that it doesn't need entertainment to feel alive. And slowly, your awareness sharpens. You begin to notice the beauty in small things. The rhythm of your breath becomes a meditation. A sip of tea becomes a ceremony. The world, which once seemed dull, reveals its sacredness. This transformation is not easy because you are unlearning years of conditioning, but it is essential. Because until you can be alone with yourself without needing to escape, you will always be a slave to stimulation. And the truth is, life isn't found in the noise, it's found in the spaces between. In the silence between thoughts, the stillness between actions, the pause between breaths. That's where presence lives. That's where creativity blooms. That's where you meet yourself, not as a collection of distractions, but as consciousness itself. So, next time you feel bored, don't rush to fill the silence. Don't reach for the phone or the television or another task to keep you busy. Sit, listen, Breathe. Let the discomfort rise and let it pass. On the other side is something rare in this world, awareness. And once you taste it, even the most ordinary moment will feel extraordinary. That is the power of boredom, if you are willing to face it. Boredom is not your enemy. It is a signal, a subtle whisper from the depths of your consciousness, telling you that something within you is either asleep or waiting to awaken. Most people recoil from boredom, treating it as a disease to be cured instantly, scrolling through phones, binging noise, avoiding silence. But what if boredom wasn't a void, but a doorway? What if, instead of trying to escape it, you leaned into it fully, without resistance? When you are bored, the world becomes uncolored, tasteless, and slow. But this slowness, this lack of stimulation, is an invitation to go inward. In the absence of external stimulation, your inner landscape begins to speak. The thoughts you've buried, the dreams you've ignored, the fears you've covered up with busyness, they all rise. This is why most people hate boredom, not because there's nothing to do, but because boredom forces them to face what they've long avoided. The way you handle boredom reveals how comfortable you are with yourself. If you need constant activity to feel alive, it means you're outsourcing your sense of being. True power is when you can sit alone in a quiet room with nothing but your own mind and feel whole. That is not laziness. That is mastery. Children understand this better than adults. When they're bored, they don't give up. They create. A cardboard box becomes a spaceship. A stick becomes a sword. They transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, not because they were given entertainment, but because their minds were given space. Most adults lose this gift. They trade imagination for consumption. They no longer create because they no longer sit long enough in the discomfort of boredom to activate the creative impulse. And yet, boredom is the birthplace of brilliance. Every great idea, every masterpiece, every innovation was born when someone grew tired of what already existed, when someone stopped running from silence and started listening to it. The artist who paints something never seen before, the philosopher who asks the questions others are too distracted to consider, the scientist who dares to see patterns in chaos. These are not people who fled boredom. These are people who became friends with it. You must train yourself to sit in that stillness, not just once, but often. Every day, allow yourself to be bored. No phone, no noise, no distraction, just you. In that boredom, you will find clarity. You will find out what you actually feel, what you genuinely desire, what you deeply fear. Most people never find these things because they never sit still long enough. They panic in the silence and miss the treasure buried inside it. This is why how you handle boredom determines everything. If you always run from it, you train your mind to expect stimulation like a drug. You become restless, dependent, and hollow. You never create anything new because your mind is too full of the old. But if you embrace boredom, if you sit with it like an old friend, you start to hear the music beneath the silence. You begin to notice the texture of your thoughts. You start to separate your voice from the noise of the world. And that's when the transformation begins. The moment you stop treating boredom as a problem and start treating it as a mirror, your entire experience of life changes. You become the creator of your reality rather than a consumer of others' creations. You reclaim authorship of your own mind. In this age, attention is gold. Everyone is fighting for yours. But boredom is the last piece of sacred ground left untouched by algorithms. When you are bored, you are free. Free from influence, free from marketing, free from programming. That space is your sanctuary. Do not surrender it so easily. So, next time boredom creeps in, don't reach for distraction. Reach inward. Ask yourself, what is this emptiness trying to teach me? What part of me is waiting to be expressed? What have I ignored for so long that it now rises in the stillness? And listen carefully, because in that quiet, in that boredom you once feared, you may just find the most authentic version of yourself staring back at you. Not bored, but alive. Boredom is not your enemy. It is not the void you've been conditioned to fear. It is, in truth, a portal, a silent, uninviting doorway that leads inward, not outward. And how you respond to it defines far more than a fleeting moment of discomfort. It reveals whether you are running from yourself or willing to sit in the stillness and meet your own being. Most people spend their lives building elaborate distractions, chasing noise, stimulation, and endless novelty, not because they are alive, but because they are afraid of encountering the silence within. But boredom, when embraced rather than avoided, becomes a mirror. It shows you what you're avoiding, what you've suppressed, and what you've forgotten about your truest nature. It strips away the unnecessary and confronts you with the raw, unfiltered reality of being. And it is in that rawness that clarity is born. When you stop fearing boredom and begin exploring it, even revering it, you unlock access to creativity, purpose, and peace. You start to see that boredom isn't the absence of meaning, but the space where meaning can be rediscovered. It's the beginning of depth in a shallow world. And when you stay with it, sit with it, watch it unfold, you come to realize that your mind is not something to be filled like a container, but observed like a sky. Thoughts drift, emotions rise, stillness remains. The real question isn't, how can I avoid boredom? It's, am I willing to walk through boredom and discover what lies beyond it? Because those who do, they awaken. They become unshakable. They cultivate focus, resilience, self-mastery. And they step off the conveyor belt of compulsive distraction to become creators of their own experience rather than consumers of everyone else's. How you handle boredom determines everything because it determines whether you are truly living your life or merely trying to escape it.